So we're on the top of Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph. Okay, we're going to have a bunch of different cases with different variations on these halachas of someone who makes a chazakah. And we're also going to have a little diversion into the halachas of edim that contradict each other. Zok the Gemara. For top line. This guy says, and the Bach really changed a little bit to make it more clear. If you look at the Bach, he says, one person says that it was my father's and I ate and I had 3 years of chazak in addition. The other person says it was my father's. I see Sadi Davoisi. And the one who said that he had it for both. They both said that they had it. That was from their fathers. One brings a raya that it was his father's, and the other one brings a raya that it would belong to that he had it for 3 years of chazakah. But he doesn't have any raya that he doesn't have any edim that he had that it belonged to his father before. Amar Rabba, Ma'ala l'shaka. The person who had the chazakah has a good time. He could say, so what's his problem? His problem is, he's saying I ate it, I have a raya that I was there for 3 years, but he doesn't have a good taina. We always said, right? We've said a number of times, the 3 years itself does not make it yours. It's just the 3 years, which is a buttress, which is a raya, a proof that his taina, his claim is a valid claim. But over here, he's just saying that it was belonged to my father, and but he doesn't have any raya that it belonged to his father. So Dr. Gemara, still has a good time. He didn't say it was for his father. He just says that I have it for 3 years. So Amarabba Mali L'Shak. Even though all he says is that he had it for 3 years, and he has a right that he had it for 3 years, it's still enough. He could have said, he could have said that, let's say again, so we're always saying Shimon is the one who was in it for 3 years, and Reuven is the one who has a raya, he has Edim that belonged to his father. So Shimon, who has a Edim that say that he ate on it, he could have said, I bought it from you, and I have a raya that I was there for 3 years. If he would have made a good taina, if he would have claimed that he bought it from him, and that he he had the 3 years of chazakah, that would certainly that's a classic case of a chazakah. He could have said that, and then he would be believed. Doesn't make a difference. The other person has Adam that originally belonged to his father, and even if he yarshed it, but if the other person is saying he sold it and he has 3 years of chazakah, he would win. Amle Abaya says, Mali l'shaka b'makam edim le'amrin. He says, no. Abaya says it doesn't work because you can't say a migu. The other person has edim that it belonged to his father. So you're saying that you bought it from me. I'm saying you're not saying you bought it from me. You're saying you have it for 3 years and also that it was my father's, but you don't have an edis for that. So that's not a chazaka with a taina. And you want to say a migu? A migu could negate the edim. The other person has edim that it did belong to his father, and that it's not that he sold it, that he didn't sell it to him. I'm sorry, not that he didn't sell it to him. He did. He's not actually claiming that it was sold to him. He's just claiming that it belonged to my father, and I have edim. So his edis, the Ruvain's edim, contradict your claim that you're saying it belonged to your father. You want to say a migu? A migu cannot overcome edim. You can't say that I could have made a different claim that would support, that would have been believed, if that claim requires that we overcome Adis. Adis is an absolute winner. Adis is the trump card, if I can use that expression these days. So you can't make a migu. You can't say theoretically, had I claimed something else to overcome an Adis. So the Gemara says, that's taka good time. We're going to continue and we're going to go based on the assumption that he couldn't have made such a migu, and therefore the land would remain in Reuven's possession, since Reuven had an edus on his side that it was his father's, and Shimon did not say a claim that could have overcome it, and the migu doesn't work. What happens if Amalei in the Avasrahi was minach? What if now the Shimon says, this is not working out well for me. I should have gotten a lawyer, and instead I messed myself up because I try to say one thing that didn't work, and then I try to say a migu, but they didn't accept my migu. So now he says, you know what? The story is not like I originally said. It really was your father's, and I bought it from him. I bought it from your father, or I bought it from you. So now he's claiming Taka that he bought it. He's not trying to say with the migu, believe me that it was my father because I have a migu. But he's saying that's exactly what happened. He's changing his claim. Excuse me. I said before, when I originally came to Besdin, when I originally came, I said it belonged to my father. What he says is, that's not what I meant. I meant that it really was, it's like really mine. It's as if I got it, my family had it for generations. But what I really meant to say is that I bought it from you, and it's 100% mine. Can a person change his taina in such a case? Now, there's no question a person cannot change his taina. You can't go ahead and say what I said before was not true, and this is the truth. But in this case, he has some kind of possible way of explaining it. And he says that this is what I really meant. Even though I said that it belonged to my father, what I really meant to say is it belongs to me as if my father owned. So that's the question. Can a person do that? Ula says yes. Now at this point, Shimon is going to win because Shimon now has said that he has the 3 years of chazak. He has the edus that he was a mukzik, and he has a way to explain what he originally said that it belonged to his father. That he doesn't really mean it belonged to his father; it means that he bought it. And if someone claims that he bought it, then he has a raya of 3 years chazaka, like we always say. Then if you have a 3 years chazaka and you claim that you bought it, even though you don't have, it doesn't help that Ruvain has Adam that he originally owned it, that his father owned it. It doesn't make a difference because now Shimon is saying he bought it from him. And like we said, it's the whole explanation that he didn't have Shimon didn't hold on to his star because he had 3 years of chazak. So Ula says, yeah, we listen to him. Nardoy disagrees. He says, no, we know what's going on here. You didn't really, it's not what you really meant. You're changing your story, even though you're trying to explain that when you said originally that your father had it, what you really meant is that you bought it from the other person. We know that really you were claiming, you're just trying to change your claim to make it in a way that works. So you can't change your claim. You can't you can't clarify your original claim and say this is what I really meant in a way that works. Zaktumar. So that's a machlekes. Ula says you can clarify your original claim, and now the Nardoi, people from Nardoi said you can. Zaktumar. Moidi Ula, even though Ula said you can do this, if what he originally said was it's my father's and it's not your father's, so then there's no way to clarify that to say afterwards what I really meant is I bought it from you. If you say Shalavoisi, it's my father, then you could say what I meant of Shalavoisi is that it's I have a really strong claim on it. But you say it's my father's and not your father's, what you mean to say is that's your father's. So now you can't you can't change the meaning of that because then you're just throwing out what you originally said. And like we said, you never believed to do that. And the second thing, if they were standing in the Besdin, and originally Shimon made the claim that he brought the Adam that he has 3 years chazak, and he said it belonged to my father, which, like we said, is not a good claim. And then he left Bezdin. He went and schmoozed with his friends outside. And then he came back and he said, "Oh, what I said when I said it was my father's, I really meant that I bought it, which is a good title." Then he can't do. We're not going to believe it. My timer, Tanose Agmre Tanose Agmre, because in that case, clearly he consulted with his friends and they said, "Oh, you should change your taina to have a better taina." In that case, we don't listen to him. If he already made a taina in Bezdin and then he left and he came back, we don't believe him. It's only if he's still in Bezdin and they say, "I'm sorry, your claim is not a good claim," and he says, "Listen, maybe you misunderstood me," then we believe him. But if he goes and talks to people, if he has a chance to consult, then we think he talked to a good lawyer who told him what to say. So Ula will concede in those two places that we don't say tayin b'chayz v'tayin. Umaydin Hardoi, on the other hand, the Hardoi who said that we don't allow someone to clarify what his taina was, what his claim was. If he says it was my father's who bought it from your father's, the chayzer v'tayim, then he could change it. Because then he's not even clarifying his taina. He's adding on additional information. He's saying, "Yeah, I said it was my father's, but I didn't say where my father got it from. My father bought it from your father. So it's true that you have Adis that it belonged to your father." So what I'm telling is, I have Shani Chazak. I had it for 3 years, and my father had bought it from your father. So I'm saying a good taina, and I also have Cheskes Gimel Shanim, and my new claim is not it's not changing my original claim. It's just adding on additional information. So then he can do that. So you see, it turns out that there really is a way for the person to win just by changing his time. But like we said before, even Ula is maskim, he can't consult with his lawyer to come up with this. It has to be something that comes up organically. He has to be standing in Bezdin, and when they tell him, "Listen, you can't be believed that it belongs that belonged to your father, and now you're changing it that you bought it," that we don't believe. So he can't go away and say, "I need to talk to my lawyer and figure it out." It has to be that he came up with this himself. In addition, in Behechi Dishtoi Mili Averoi Lebezdin Loiton, but also Lebeidina Baton. The Bnei Nardoi also, who says you can't be Tayin B'chayz Baton, you can't change your claim, they would agree that if they were talking outside of Bezdin and Shimon, who's the muhsik, said to him, "This is my father's field. Why are you claiming that it's your father's field?" And then they came into Bezdin. Then they came into Bezdin, and now he changes in Bezdin. He says, "Now that I bought it from you." The chayz v'toy. In that case, he can't change his claim. My timer of an because when they're talking outside of Bezdin, before the Bezdin, what he said at that point that it was his father's is meaningless. Doesn't have any, he's not held to that. The person, when he's talking to his opponent outside of Bezdin, he's not being made at this point. All he's doing is talking to him. He's not saying his tinus. He doesn't want to tell him his what he's going to say in Bezdin. He doesn't want to give him time to think of a way to overcome his tinus. So then when he gets into Bezdin, when he says truly that it was sold, he sold it to me, we disregard what he had said before. The Rishonim talk about why isn't this admitting, right? If he would admit to the person outside of Bezdin and say, I'm going to go into Bezdin and claim it's mine, but it's really yours, and I'm just a liar, he wouldn't be believed. But we say in this case it's slightly different. The Rishonim say because he's not saying that it's not true. He's not saying that it's not mine. He's just saying it's mine for a different reason. But that could be because he doesn't want to give the other person the opportunity to figure out how he could get around his tinus. So if it's just tinus, you could change what your taina is when you go into Bezdin. Amar Amema, Anor Nahadoano. Amema says, I come from Nahado, was really the time of Chaz. He says, even so, I paskin like Ula. The halacha is taka like ula that a person can amend, he can clarify his original taina in a way that allows him to it. Okay, so we're at the two dots, 7 lines from the bottom on Lavan Aleph. What's the dal the bach? Two people. Reuven says it's my father's. I got it from my father, and I also had it for 3 years. And then Shimon says it's my father's, and I also had it for 3 years. Hi, I see Sadi Davose va'achla shani chazaka, and one brings Adam. Let's say Reuven brings Adam that it was his father's, and that he had it for 3 years. And Shimon does not have Adam that it belonged to his father. He only has Adam that he was there for 3 years. Amar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says, Rav Nachman says, okay, you have two pairs of Adam. One, Reuven's pair of Adam said both that it was his father's, meaning that there was a taina, and he buttresses his taina with Adam, that it was his father's, and also that that it was currently his. He had it for the last 3 years. And Shimon's Adam come and contradict Reuven's Adam on the part that they said that he had it for 3 years, because that Reuven had it for 3 years, because they say no, Shimon had it for the last 3 years. Can't both be true. They can't both be muhsik in the same thing. But they don't say any edus about whose father it was originally. So we say the two parts, it's two edus from the different pairs of edim contradict, they makash each other, they cancel each other out, and all you're left with is the one edus that said that it belonged to Reuven's father, and therefore Reuven will win. That's Rav Nachman Shita. Amlei Rava, ha'edus mecheshasi. Rava says, how can you listen to part of what these Eidim are saying? These Eidim that were canceled out. We said we don't know who to believe as far as who had the 3 years of Chazakah. So therefore, we're not going to believe either one of them, and we're just going to cancel it out. But we're saying we believe the part of the Eidim that those Eidim said that it was Reuven's father's land, and he's a Marakama. How could you believe them? They were contradicted by the second pair of Eidim and part of what they said. We can't listen to anything they say. So he said back to him, Rav Nachman said back to him, Amalei, he said, listen, the part that they're contradicted on, we don't believe them. The part that they're not contradicted on, there's no pair of edis saying that what they're saying is not true. We could believe that part. So let's say this machlokes of Rav and Rav Nachman, that Rav Nachman says we believe a partial edus when part of it is contradicted. And Rava said not. But look to the Rav Huna Rav Chizda. Let's say it's the same machlokes as that of Rav Huna Rav Chizda. Komefli. Deitma. Beiski de edim hamachisha zuazu. If you have two pairs of edim that disagree with one another, right? One says that that Reuven owes Shimon money, and the other one says that he doesn't. That the loan never happened. And then, we're not talking about. I just want to make a disclaimer. Obviously we're not talking about Edim Zaymimin. The Edim Zaymimin, the second pair of Edim is always believed. We're talking about Chishim, where they contradict each other about the facts of the case, not about whether he was with him in a different place. So basically, on Chisha Zuazu, Amar Rav Huna, Zuba b'fneatzu me'ida. Rav Huna says, after the two are machash each other, each one of the pairs of Edim could go and say a different Edis. And the other one could come and say Edis in a different case. Because in that case, there was someone being machash them, but we don't know who to believe. So they still remain. There's nothing impugning the integrity of these Edim. It's possible that they were lying, but it's possible not. So we don't. Since beforehand they were kosher Edim, and there's a suffix about whether they lied. We don't say that now they're going forward. They're not kosher. Rav Chizda says no. You can't be mitzi mammon with using these Edim, because it's possible. It's a suffix whether they're good Edom, and now you want to use them. Someone, if Levi, if Yisachar brings these Edom that were hochash in this previous din Torah between Reuven and Shimon, now Yisachar says, I want this aid who was contradicted and he couldn't be believed in that previous case. I want him to be my aidist that Zvulun owes me money. How could you be Moitzi Mammon? Misafik, maybe Misaf. The suffix is that maybe they're not a good aid. So Chizda says we don't. Once an Adis had said something that might be false, that's a suffix. We don't believe anything else he says. Lema Rav Nachman. So let's say Rav Nachman, who says we split the Adis by us, where we don't believe him as far as the three is chazaka because he's contradicted in that part, but we do believe him on the other part. The Amak Rav Huna, he says like Rav Huna, who says that Adam that were hukash in the previous case can be believed in the second case. The Rava Rav Chizda, and Rava, who says that we don't believe him, says like Rav Chizda, who says that we never believe Adam that were hukash. Zok the Gemara. Look, Gemara says no. Ali b'der Rav Chizda kol yamalei pligi. According to Rav Chizda, there's no choice. According to Rav Chizda, it's going to have to be that Rav is going to have to say Rav Chizda. The question is going to be in Rav Huna. Rav Nachman, Rav Huna v'Rava. Rav Nachman will have to still be like Rav Huna. Rav Nachman, who says that we believe someone in our case, he would be here. We'd have to believe like Rav Huna that in a case where they said in the previous case Adis that they believed in a future case. But Rava would say Ad kan Rava who argues over here and he says we don't believe him. He would say Ad kan Rav Huna. That which Rav Huna says that he is believed in the case over there in the second where the Adam is coming to say a separate Adis. And Rav Huna said he's believed. That's El Adis Acharis. He's believed because he's saying a totally different Adis. So we didn't believe him in this one because it's a suffix. But now when he comes to say new Adis, we don't say that this Adis is forever. These Adim are forever choshed and they're not believed. Aval Adis loy. But if it's in the same Adis, he would say in our case where they said one Adis or they said two parts of the same Adis that they said that it was. He said that it was. He said first of all that it was his father's, and second of all that he ate shalosh shanim. So in that case, Lagabi to say that he should be believed to take the same edus and cut it in half and say he's not believed for half and he is believed in half. Even Rav Huna, who says over there that he is believed, he'll be maskim in our case that he's not believed. Okay, so the Gemara has come to, as we're going to see, the Gemara comes to the conclusion that we hold, like Reb Nachman, that we do split the Edis. We say we believe the Edim that said that it was his father's, even though there's partially contradicted, that there's other Edim that contradict them, Lagabi the Shalasham. Hadar Aisi Sadi Davasi. What happens if later on, what was the problem? Right, we said Reuven had brought Edim that it was both that it was his father's and it was Shalosh Shanim, and Shimon had only brought Edim that it was Shalosh Shanim. So therefore, we gave the karka to Reuven because he has Edis still. His part of the Edis that it was his father's is still Kaim. There's nothing contradicting it. What happens if now Shimon pops up and he says, "Oh look, I got Edim that say that it's my father's." So now they're both equal. What do you do now? Amar Nachman, anan achtine achtine anan maskin. He says, listen, we gave it to Shimon on the basis of the fact that Shimon had additional Edis, that he also had Edis that was his father. I'm sorry, we gave it to Reuven on the basis that Reuven had additional Edim that it was also his father's. Now that Shimon brings his Edim that it was his father's, so he said we awarded it to Reuven. Anan achtine anan maskin. We took it away. We took it away so we could give it back. That means it's within our power. If even though we had originally given it to Reuven, but now that there's new Adam that came that made Shimon's power equal, so we're going to take it away from Reuven, and now we're going to relitigate the whole case. The way the Rashbam says it, even though it's anan maskinale means we give it to him, it means what it really means is that we now have to relook at this case. We'll put it in escrow and we'll figure out what the din is. And we're not concerned about the fact that Bezdin will look as if they're a little bit vacillating. They're a bit uncertain because first they give it to one person, the next day they take it away from him. Masav Rava v'temer of Zeira. They asked the Kashan of Nachman. Or Nachman, you're saying that we're not concerned about first awarding to one person, then taking it away from him. We have a brayso shnayim oimrim meis, u'shnayim oimrim lo meis. Two people said about Reuven was married to Rachel, and the two Edom that come and say Reuven died, and then two other Edom came and say he didn't die. U'shnayim oimrim nisgarsha, u'shnayim oimrim lo nisgarsha. Two people said that Reuven divorced her, and other two Edom said he didn't divorce her. Harezu lo tinasei. Rachel, Reuven's wife, can't remarry. V'im nisis. But if she did remarry, lo teitze. We don't take her away from her husband because even though she shouldn't have married, but we're talking about the Gemara. Subas explains that we're talking about a case where the husband was claiming that the wife was claiming that I know that my husband would have come back, so therefore I'm not concerned, and that my husband is really alive. And the man who marries her says, I also know that the father's dead, so they're both buried. So in that case, they could, because as we know, we were Mishum Iguna, Kula Baraban, and the Chacham are worried about Iguna, so we allow it to remarry. That's the Tanakama Shita. He says she does have to go out from this marriage. Amar Nachman Bar Yosi, but Nachman Bar Yosi clarified. When do I say she has to go out of the marriage? Where the first Edom came and said your husband is dead, and then the second pair of Edom came and said he's not dead. And then after all the Edom was in, and the Bezdin said, you can't get married on this basis because we have contradicting Edom. And then afterwards even though she shouldn't have, she married. Aval nisis. But if the Edom had first come and said that your husband is dead, and the Bezdin said, okay, you're clear to remarry. And then afterwards the Edom came, she can't go away. So over here we see that the reason why she doesn't have to be removed from her husband is because Bezdin had blessed her remarriage. So now when the other Edom come and contradict, we don't want Mishum Zilusa the Bezdin. We don't want to contradict. We don't want Bezdin to retract what they had originally paskin. So Rav Nachman, when he heard this, he said, you bring a good raya. This is true. You're proving to me that Bezdin doesn't retract what they originally did. Amalei, anosvir lemevet uvda. I thought that I was going to talk a paskin that if a second pair of Edom come and say that Shimon also Shimon's father also was an owner, and then we have contradicting Edom that will take it away from Reuben. That's what I thought to do. Since you asked this question, and Rav Huna B'Surya also asked this question, I'm not going to do it. You're right. We have to worry about the Ilusa de Beidina. We can't pass and connect that. But then, all of a sudden, after Rav Nachman made his big concession speech, and he said we have to worry about that Bezdin's going to look bad, and therefore we can't undo what they had originally paskin in the face of later Edom. He went anyway, and he did retract. Someone who saw Rav Nachman doing this said, he made a mistake. He forgot that he had to retract it. He had to concede that there is a rule of Mishum Zilus de Beidina, and now he's undoing the original din. But it's not true. El Mishum Detalya Ba'ashli Rabbi. He had a great basis. He had a very good basis where both Tanoim agree to this svara that we don't worry about Zilus de Beidina. It's not. we can't make someone tell someone that you're a kosher kohen because of the edus of a single egg. That means, let's say, um, Levi is the son of Aaron, and he assumed well, we'll see exactly what was the opposing. And there's a rumor going out that even though he's the son of Aaron, who's a Kayin, but Aaron married a Ben Grusha Grusha Chalutza, or a Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza, or Aaron himself was a Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza. And now Eid Echad said, no, it's not true. Aaron didn't marry a Grusha Chalutza, and therefore Levi is a valid Kayin. Amar Abelaza, so we said we can't put him into the kahuna because of 1/8. Amar Abelaza, Emasai, when do I say this? Bisman sheyesh ayrin. If there are people who are claiming that it's not true, and as we're going to see, ayrin b'derech klal means two people. You have two eidim that are saying that his mother was a grusha chalutza. Avumakom she'ein ayrin. But if there's no one claiming otherwise, mal lakun al pi. You can't place someone into the kuna because of a single person. Shim Gamliel Aimer, Mishum Shim Ben Askan, he said, Mal lakun al pi echad. He disagreed. He said, no, one aid is enough to bring him into the kuna. Now the Gemara asks him, Shim Gamliel, Hainu Rabbi Elazar, what's the difference between these two shitas? The first Manda Amma says, Rabbi Elazar says that you can't be Mala, but that's b'makom sheyesh iron. But if there's no iron, if there's no one claiming otherwise, then you could be mal. And then Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, malakun al piedech. You can be mal. So he's essentially the same thing. And if you want to say that Rabbi Elazar said, "Bisman b'makom sheyesh iron malakuna," emasai b'makom sheyesh iron. When do I say that you can't be mala? That's but if there's no iron at all, even if there's the iron that we're talking about is only 1/8, but the malkum she'ain iron, then you could be malakuna. And Rishon Gamliel says you could be malakuna even against two iron. That Rabbi Elazar holds, he says that it can be malakuna. You can't even be malakuna against the era of one. And Rav Shimon Gamliel, Savar Iratrei. Rav Shimon Gamliel says he could be Malakuna even against the era of two. That can't be. Everyone, whenever we talk about era, it always means Stein. So they're both talking about the same case where they were era of two. And Rabbi Elazar says you could be Mala if there's no era, and that's what Rav Shimon Gamliel said as well. The Gemara v'Amar Rabbi Yochanan de'Yakol and Ira Pakushayim Elo Iratrei. They're both talking about Iratrei. So then, what is the machlekes? V'Achmayeskina. What is the machlekes? Going machzekina le'bavua dehayke koyenu benafak aleh kol de ben grusha ben chalutzu. We're talking about, like we said, Aaron the father. There was a chazaka that he was a kohen, and then a koil came out that he was a ben grusha ben chalutzu. He wasn't a valid kohen. V'achtina. And therefore, Bezdin Paskin, on the basis of this koil, that he wasn't. He said he can't be a kohen. But in the meantime, that means Bezdin said we don't know. We have to investigate this room. At the Vilo, where we're going to make him not a kohen. Then an Eid Echad came and said he's a kohen. So an Eid Echad connected a regular koil, like we said, a koil is not really anything. Baskina. So therefore they said, oh, then he's a good bez, he's a good kohen. We have an Eid Echad connected just a koil. Also Beitrei, then two Eidim came, Fami de Ben Grusha Ben Chalusi. They said that he's not a valid kohen because his father was a Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza. Now two Eidim, like we said, that's the gold standard. All you have against these two Eidim is a single Eid. We had a koil. So now you have a koil together with the two Eidim, connected 1/8. So obviously the Bezdin is going to pass him like the two Eidim. So therefore they said he's no longer a valid kohen. Now another. Now we. This is the third time we had the coil. Then now the third aidis. This is a second. So this is a single aid which matches with the original aid that said he's kosher. Right. First we had a coil saying he's puzzle. An aid echad said he's kosher. Two aidim came and said he's puzzle. Now we have a second aid that we want to put together with the first aid that says that he's kosher. Then you have two against two. And everyone will, at this point, the Gemara is saying, everyone will agree that the first aid, together with the second aid that came after the two aidim together, could be put together. You can take two single aids that come separately and put them together. So what's the issue? So what is the machlokes about? The question is, once we already paskin on the basis of the two aidim, when the single aid comes and agrees with the other single aid, do we go now and undo what they had said that he's puzzle and now reinstate him as a kosher kain? Elazar says, since we had already taken him out and said that he's not a good kain, we don't put him back because it's embarrassing for the Besdin. He says, no, we take him out. Like your mother said, I brought you into this world, I could take you out. The Bezdin, the same way the Bezdin took him away and said he's not in the good aid now that the second aid comes, we put him back. So therefore everyone is agreeing. Yeah. In fact, the Gemara Maskul Ravashi. If that's the case, why are we saying that only one aid came on the second time? If our concern is that we don't want to embarrass the court by undoing what they originally said. So why are you saying specifically they're talking about where one aid came first and then another aid came second? Just talking about where two aidim came and said that he's puzzle, and then two aidim came and said that he's kosher. And the question is, Luzilusa the Beidina. Everyone agrees that we're not concerned. For the fact we split up the edus, it must be that that's the point of the mission. I've looked at, but in any case, before we go on with the finish off the Gemara, but now this is the Ashli Ravavi, this is the great smat. Now we're saying that everyone agrees that we're not chayshish l'zusa bedina. That's where Nachman, even though we had brought a brisa before that said we are chayish, but he says now we see that both Rabbi Elazar and Rav Shimon Gamliel agree that we're not chayish l'zusa bedina. And now, but now we're saying it's l'tzar fedus. And you put together this. So put the Hani Tanoi, the Tanya. La'olam einei dusa mitztarefes achiyu shneim ke'echad. First, the Bryce is talking about a separate topic of whether if two people see something separately, can you make them aid them together? Bishur ben Kacha mafil b'zeh achazeh. Bishur ben Kacha says doesn't make a difference. It doesn't have to be they saw it all together. They could see it on different days. Even if it's on different days, you could still believe them. Could put them together. And we say also, another thing is, and this is the question that we're talking about, can we be mitzdarf? We say you can't be mitzdarf until they say their edus at the same time in Basra. He says, no, you can be mitzdarf when they say their edus separately, which is the machlokes that we just said. Okay, we'll stop over here.